What people don't realize is the effect it has on children, because when you're born into Scientology, you're not wanted. They even, if you're in the Sea Org, you're not allowed to have children. And so when they do get pregnant, they usually get kicked off or like taken somewhere else, and the kids are just like dropped into this orphanage situation, and they're raised by people around them who aren't really watching them. So they're severely neglected in every sense: medical neglect, emotional neglect, education neglect, all of those things. And the stories you hear about the children are so heartbreaking because, again, they don't really know any different.
Okay, guys, we got Shelise from the Cults to Consciousness podcast. We're going to be talking about some interesting stuff today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I was really excited when you reached out because you have such a colorful array of guests that I was like, all right, what are we going to talk about?
All sorts of perspectives, too. I got some Mormons, some Christians, some Islam, got a little bit of it all.
Yeah.
So your audience is more like how would you describe it, I guess?
Our audience is comprised of a few different things. I would say we do have a large majority of people who have left cults themselves because we interview cult survivors. So we have people who find solidarity and understanding and validation in our guests and their stories. And then we have people who are more interested in true crime, who just like to hear the interesting stories that happen to real people. And other than that, I think people are just interested in cults or people who want to be advocates. We have an amazing community who rallies around our guests, and so it helps our guests feel supported and willing to come on and share the deepest, darkest parts of their life, because we get so many positive comments, which, as you know, is pretty rare for a social media platform to get mostly positive comments.
I would say that's like one of one.
I know, it's crazy. I don't know how it happened, but we just always, I guess we start every show off with encouraging people to leave positive words of encouragement. And so I think they see how much it helps. And we also have people sharing their own stories in the comments. And so I think them feeling safe enough to do that says a lot about the community.
Yeah, you're providing like a safe space almost, right?
Yeah.
I bet the only hate you get is from the cult leaders themselves.
Yeah. Exactly.
Have you gotten some of those?
Yeah, not so much from the cult leaders themselves. I think they couldn't be bothered to do that. But the people who are still involved in the cult in some way maybe just haven't seen all of the information yet. And we get it, because I've been there myself, where I defended Mormonism to the death. And I was like, you guys don't understand. You have it wrong. Not realizing that I was the one that was misinformed. I was the one who was lied to by the church itself. So whenever I see those comments, I can still have compassion for them, because I know that they don't have the full story.
Right. Wow. So you used to defend Mormonism.
Oh, 100%.
From what age range?
All the way till I left.
Wow.
I actually lived in Vegas. I lived out here, and this is when I decided to leave. There was a bishop that was just harping on me super hard, and I thought I was doing everything right. I was living in Sin City and still never drank alcohol or smoked weed. The only rules I was breaking would be the modesty rules.
What's that?
But what's the modesty rules?
Yeah.
So this shirt would definitely not be allowed. It has to be a sleeve, and it can't be sheer. So when you get married in the temple, which is like the highest honor, it's what everyone hopes to achieve one day, you get what's called garments. So you may have heard of them. It's like an undershirt and undershorts that you wear as your underwear, men and women. And so you have to follow the modesty. It helps you be modest, because if they're showing, then your shirt's not modest enough.
Wow.
So it's like a t-shirt. But the funny thing is, they recently changed them to tank tops, or they gave options for tank tops, and everyone is rejoicing, which is great. I love that they're being more progressive, but also all of us who were shamed and ridiculed for having tank tops are like, are you kidding me? It doesn't even matter anymore. What's going on?
I think all the social media pressure is forcing them to make some changes, right?
I think so. Social media, in some ways, they are loosening up, and then in other ways, they're doubling down. So there was something that came out recently. It was like a leaked publication to the bishops and the ones in charge of the different congregations. And they were saying that you can't give temple recommends to women who are using the yoga pants loophole, because you don't have to wear your garments. There's like the 4 S's or something. I'm sure everyone will correct me in the comments, but there's like sweating, which is working out, sex, swimming, and showering. I think those are the main ones. And so if you just put on yoga pants, it's like, well, I'm about to go to the gym. And so you don't ever wear them because you're just in workout clothes all day. So there was something that came out where the higher council was telling the bishops, hey guys, if they're not wearing their garments and they're doing the yoga pants thing, you can't give them a temple recommend, which is a really big deal in Mormonism, because if you can't go to the temple, that means you're not going to be able to go to the highest level of heaven if you're not consistently going and doing the endowments for the dead and all of that. So, yeah, it's a harsh punishment when you can't go to the temple.
Wow. Did that ever happen to you where you weren't allowed to go?
I never made it because I wasn't worthy enough.
Damn. 12 years and you weren't worthy enough?
So I was in till I was like 21. I left when I was 21, and I didn't go because there's a couple ways you can get your garments. The first way is if you go on a mission. So they lowered the age to where you can go, I think when you're 19 as a girl. Before it was 21 because they wanted you to get married instead of going on missions. Now you can go when you're younger, and if you go on a mission, then you go to the temple, take out your endowments, and get your garments. The other way is if you get married. So I didn't go on a mission, and I didn't get married, so I never went to the temple. Some women, if they don't do either of those, and they're later in age, like in their 30s, they can ask for special permission to go in solo and get your endowments out. So I just didn't make it to those milestones, and I'm glad I didn't because I would have hated it.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of missions these days, I heard.
Yeah, they're sending out missionaries even
Africa,
recently.
right?
Yes, I was just going to say, I know of someone personally whose son was sent to a really dangerous part in Africa, and I wish the name popped up into my head, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it was just on the news of how dangerous it was. They're decapitating people in the street, and they're sending these 19-year-old boys to go preach the word, and I just think that that's really stupid.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Why would you risk that?
I think personally that missions, and they've said this, so it's not even an opinion. They've said it over the pulpit that missions are to convert the missionary more than to actually get converts outside.
Oh, really?
Because it's like a boot camp. They have a very, very strict schedule. They have to wake up, I think it's at 6 a.m., maybe 7, and do Bible study. And their day is completely scheduled until they go to sleep. They have one free day called the P day, which usually just means this is the day we do laundry and get groceries and everything that we couldn't do throughout the day. It's like a really intense boot camp situation for 2 years of their life. And so by the time they get back, it's the sunk cost fallacy of, well, if I don't believe it, all of that was for nothing. So then they tend to double down in their faith. Some missions are great experiences for people, and they come back with a new language and new experiences. Others are extremely scary. I had a cousin who had a severe medical situation that was not handled properly. Some missionaries are not given enough money for food. I interviewed someone on our channel who was put into a hoarder's basement as a living situation, and it was so filthy. She had asthma issues. So the thing that bothers me the most is it's a billion-dollar corporation, and these kids are paying to go out and be free marketing, free labor for the church to bring in more members who will bring in more tithing money. So to me, it's a big MLM scheme where they're sending out kids to do this work, and they're the ones who end up suffering in some cases, in a lot of cases, and the church doesn't need the money.
Yeah.
They really don't. And in this day and age when people have the internet, people aren't converting to Mormonism because they're like, oh yeah, I saw that Cults to Consciousness podcast. No, thank you. So that's why they're going to places like Africa or third world countries where they don't really know any better.
Right.
And it seems like a good thing because they may be offering some type of help or exchange, but they don't really know what they're signing up for.
Yeah, that's nuts. So if you're on a mission and you're like a month in, but you want to go back home, is that even possible?
You can. There are ways, but it comes with a lot of shame. So if you come home early from your mission, your whole family is shamed. You could say that that's a social thing. The church isn't telling people to shame others who come home, but it's seen as something really awful. In fact, well, I guess it's not entirely true because there was a sermon, I want to say 20 years ago or so, maybe a little before that, where one of the prophets or the general authorities told their son, and he was explaining this in a general conference talk. He said, oh, I'd rather you come home in a coffin than come home early.
Jeez.
So it's a big deal to come home early.
That's nuts. Yeah, these people are some of them, not all of them, are just so indoctrinated, right?
Yeah.
It sucks because they want the best for their family, obviously, but.
Yeah, and the parents don't really know any better because they were most likely raised in it too. And it's just part of the society, and it's something that everyone goes through, and you just kind of, you keep following the cycle until you wake up from it, until you do your own research, until you look into the truth claims in the history. There's a lot buried in the history. So when I moved to Portland, my senior year of high school, out of Utah, because I grew up in Utah in a small town, where everyone's Mormon, so no one asks questions.
Shout out to today's sponsor, Quince. As the weather cools, I'm swapping in the pieces that actually gets the job done, that are warm, durable, and built to last. Quince delivers every time with wardrobe staples that'll carry you through the season. They have fall staples that you'll actually want to wear, like the 100% Mongolian cashmere for just $60. They also got classic fit denim and real leather and wool outerwear that looks sharp and holds up. By partnering directly with ethical factories and top artisans, Quince cuts out the middleman to deliver premium quality at half the cost of similar brands. They've really become a go-to across the board. You guys know how I love linen and how I've talked about it on previous episodes. I picked up some linen pants and they feel incredible. The quality is definitely noticeable compared to other brands. Layer up this fall with pieces that feel as good as they look. Go to quince.com/DSH for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. They're also available in Canada too.
All of a sudden, everyone's asking questions, and they're like, "You're Mormon? Do you have horns?" I'm like, "What? Where is this even coming from?" And one of my best friends at the time cornered me in my car and was like, "Hey, here are all the things that you believe, and this is why it's wrong. And if you don't believe my way, you're going to go to hell." And I was like, "Girl," the thing she was saying to me, like, Joseph Smith translated the golden plates by putting his head into a hat. And I was like, oh, that's like the worst stupid rumor that I've ever heard. It's so silly. Like, why would that even be a thing? I'm Mormon. I would know. None of this is true. And then I found out later that it was all true. And
Wow.
they just lied to their members because it's silly. They don't want to admit to the actual church history, or they give partial truths. And so when I left and I started looking into it, I felt bamboozled. I was like, what? I was lied to my whole life. They are now starting to admit to certain things, like how the founder Joseph Smith married a 14-year-old girl, how he married mother-daughter pairs, how he married sisters. They're admitting to a lot of things, but you really have to look for it on the church website if you're going to find it, because they're not talking about it over the pulpit. Like, hey, guys, sorry, I know we told you Joseph Smith didn't practice polygamy. He did. They're not telling you these things. And so if you're just on the hamster wheel and going about life, you just think everyone's making up crazy rumors, and you think that they're just anti-Mormon, when in reality, they know more about the history than you do.
That's nuts. How many wives did he have, Joseph Smith?
I think he had about 34 confirmed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so we're working on a documentary right now, actually, and we just had on a historian who specializes in Mormon polygamous history. And I was even learning things that I hadn't known about, and I feel like I've been pretty well educated after starting this channel and really looking into Mormon history. But the sad thing is, his wife didn't even know about it for a while. Yeah.
All 33 of the other ones she didn't know about?
Well, she knew eventually, but in the beginning, when he started practicing it in secret, he didn't tell his wife. And so that's something that we never learned growing up Mormon. We knew that Emma had a hard time with it, and she was opposed to it, but she did it because that's what the Lord wanted. And then Joseph Smith painted it as, well, I don't want to practice polygamy, but an angel with a flaming sword came to me and said, if I don't, he's going to smite me. And so basically just coercing her into it.
Jeez.
And the same way that he coerced young girls into polygamy, or some girls, he was trying to force them to marry him, and they were like, no. And so he would shame them, publicly say that they were prostitutes, and basically tarnish their name so that they were screwed for prospects when they got older. Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Has anyone from his family tree spoken out on stuff like this? Joseph?
Yeah, you know what? And I think Helen Mar Kimball is one where you can look into it. She did marry him. I believe she was the one who was 14 when she got married to him. And the church website says just shy of her 15th birthday, because they won't admit that she was 14. I believe she is one who wrote a book on it. You'd have to double check.
You got to interview her on your show.
Well, she's dead by now.
Oh.
That was a long time ago.
Okay.
I know. Yeah, there are people who could probably trace their lineage back to Joseph Smith, or, well, that's the thing. He didn't have children by his plural wives, and that's why some people claim it never happened.
Oh, he didn't have kids with any of them?
With his only wife, his first wife, Emma. But there were ways back then of terminating pregnancies. Women knew how to do this, and it's also rumored that Joseph Smith had a doctor on call who would perform abortions for him. And not to mention, some of these women were already married when Joseph Smith took them as his spiritual wife. So who's to say that it wasn't Joseph Smith's kid instead of the other husband's kid? He even married a pregnant woman. So
What the heck?
I think her name was Zaina or Zina. I need to get all of these facts memorized better, but I have a pretty good grip on it.
I still can't believe 34. Like, this dude's just...
Yeah, but that's actually nothing compared to what's going on today. So there's a group called the Kingstons. Have you heard of them?
Is there a documentary on them or something?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. So you probably heard of Warren Jeffs.
Yes.
The Keep Sweet Pray Obey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different fundamentalist sect of Mormonism, which they are doing horrendous things at the hands of Warren Jeffs, who's currently in prison because of it, because of underage girls and claiming they were heavenly sessions in the temple.
Right.
But there is a group in Utah right now called the Kingstons, and they believe they're also a fundamentalist sect, a break off of Mormonism. When Mormonism had to officially stop practicing polygamy because of the government, they're like, okay, guys, we're seriously going to stop now. Some people are like, no thanks. Joseph Smith said it's the only way to celestial glory. We have to keep doing this. But the Kingstons twisted it a little bit and said, well, actually, we are the direct descendants of Jesus himself, which means we need to keep the bloodline pure, which means we need to marry our own sisters and we need to marry our nieces. We need to make sure that we're marrying the Kingston line.
That's some Game of Thrones stuff right there.
Yeah, so the leader currently today, this still exists today, in Salt Lake City has, I think he has 37 wives.
Oh my gosh.
I could be wrong on the number, but it's definite. Maybe it's 27. I think he has 27 wives and over 300 children. And yeah, married
and
to
with
half
his
sisters,
own, like, cousins and stuff. And
half sisters.
the kids are coming out with issues.
They are having birth defects, and there were a lot of men who were becoming sterile because of it. And of course, they blame the women. But now they have their own labs where they do blood testing on kids when they turn 8 or 10. They blood test all the siblings to see who can marry each other.
No way.
Yeah, genetically who's compatible and who they need to stay away from. Or this is even worse and horrific, and I can't imagine. I interviewed someone who was encouraged to get an abortion. So they coerced her to marry her uncle. She didn't really have a choice. She's young. And then when she got pregnant, she did some genetic testing on the baby, and there were high likelihood of birth defects. And so the leader sat her down and was like, hey, if you have this baby, you're not going to be able to have more babies or as many babies as you should because you're going to be focused on this special needs baby. So here are some women who have had babies and aborted that type and went on to have 10 kids. And then here are women who decided to keep the baby and they only had like 5. So your choice, but basically saying you should abort your baby. And so she did because she felt pressured into it.
Wow.
In a situation that she didn't even ask for to begin with.
That's
to marry her uncle. And
they
so
shamed her.
And so the women are having to deal with these consequences of these leaders thinking that they're basically God. And it's just horrifying.
That is horrifying. Have you spoken to anyone in that Kingston cult yet?
Many.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
So they're speaking out now.
Yes. Specifically, everyone go check out Amanda Ray. She's awesome. We're good friends. She's had a YouTube channel for 7 years now exposing the order. She was on a TV show called Escaping Polygamy. And her whole thing was helping people escape the cult, FLDS, and other polygamous groups in Utah. But she's been doing her best to expose the order. In fact, recently, we actually picketed out front of their church. It was the first time in order history that they've been protested. And it's because we were made aware of still underage marriages going on. And so we were trying to get messages to the kids. And so we went and sat in front of their church, and it's all gated. And so there were guards at each gate, but we set up signs and we were trying to be loving. We weren't screaming and yelling because that would only confirmation bias them think, see, the world hates us and they're persecuting us.
Right.
So we had loving signs like coerced choice is not choice, or there's love outside, and just smiling and waving to the kids. And the leaders were shook. They were like, oh my gosh, what do we do? They called the cops, which we called them earlier, so they knew we were there. The cops came and they're like, yeah, they're peacefully protesting. They have every right to be here, and the cops were on our side.
Nice.
So it was great. But I had, get this, a conversation with one of the 7 brothers. He's like one of the main leaders. And I personally know that he has 14 wives because I had interviewed number 7 who had left. And he has over 163 children.
Holy crap.
So he walks up and I know the horror stories that his children have personally told me. And he comes up all jolly and jovial and, hey guys, how you doing? What can I do for you? Can I get you some water? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm dying inside because I know who he is.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm afraid you guys are misinformed. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, oh, we love our children very much. And just that sentence out of his mouth, I wanted to smack it clean from him because I know that's not true. And I was like, oh, so you guys don't practice underage marriage? No. It's illegal to get married, lie. And then I said, not even spiritual wives. And, oh, no. Okay, so you don't practice polygamy. And he lies to my face. He's like, oh, polygamy is illegal in the state of Utah. I was like, I'm well aware. And meanwhile, 2 of his children are actually protesting with us.
Wow.
So I should have, in the moment, I should have been like, hey, Jessica.
Oh, that would have been savage.
Hey, Joe, come on.
I wish you recorded that.
Jessica, your mom's number 5. Joe, your mom is half sisters to him, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't, though. I didn't want to provoke, and I wanted to see what he would say when confronted. And he just lied about everything. I asked how many kids he had, and he's like, oh, I have quite a few. I was like, yeah, how many? I kept asking until finally he was like, oh, just over a dozen. And I'm like, liar.
Only off by 145-ish.
Yeah, exactly. He was just basically trying to mince his words in a way that wasn't technically lying in some ways, but clearly avoiding the truth. It was just, yeah. It was awesome, though, because the kids were coming up to the fence, taking pictures of the signs, and we are just hoping to get the messages to the kids that they have options, that there are people who want to help them because they don't know.
Yeah.
They're completely isolated.
That's all they know, right?
Yeah.
They probably don't have phones. I'd imagine they banned those.
No, they have phones.
Oh, they do?
That's what's so interesting about the order and about a lot of these cults in general is they control their population with fear and information control.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll, for example, Warren Jeffs, way before he got arrested, started preaching to his people. They're coming after me, and one day they're going to come and get me because I'm the true prophet of God, and Satan doesn't want us to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's because he's doing illegal things. So when they come and arrest him, it's not, oh my gosh, did our prophet do something wrong that we should be concerned about? It's, he said it was going to happen. Prophecy fulfilled. They get even deeper into their faith because they've already conditioned them to what's going to happen.
Wow.
So that when it comes to their face and we're saying, hey, your prophet has been doing this to underage women, their thought is, well, no, he's already explained what he's doing and we already know that it's what God wants. So why are you persecuting us? So even being injected into mainstream society in Salt Lake City, they are still isolated because they have their own banking system. They have their own grocery stores. They have their own businesses, everything. You're only allowed to work at these businesses. You can't interact with outsiders. If you do, you are given a script of what to say. You're given a script of how you lie and tell them that you only have 4 brothers instead of 16 or 20.
Wow.
So they really don't even have regular interactions with other people to know that what's going on is wrong.
That's crazy.
They're like, wait, incest is wrong? I had no idea. Some people feel weird about it, right? You always have that gut feeling. And obviously abuse doesn't feel good. And they're like, yeah, I don't like this. But they're told that the outside world is worse.
Wow.
So can you imagine being in that situation, beaten almost every day by a father who barely exists, who's basically a sperm donor to your single mom of 15 children who works 12 hours a day and you start work at 4 years old because you have to give all your money to your dad and you're living in extreme poverty and then you're told outside is worse than this. Are you going to try to escape? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And some people do try to escape, and when they do, they're literally, some people, I've interviewed these people, were ambushed, thrown into a van and taken to a facility for troubled teens that's like an outside, it was a Mormon facility, Mormon-run facility, not an order facility. And they convince these people that these children need to be rehabilitated. And the facility believes it because they don't know any better. So they're being kidnapped even when they try to leave. It's an impossible situation. And that's why we try to expose it on our channel, why we try to bring on people who can share their real stories and the audience can see this is really happening still today.
Yeah.
In plain sight. They're cults hiding in plain sight.
I can't believe the leaders are just getting away with this in broad daylight. Like, at what point does government get involved? Like, they get arrested?
So we have it on good authority that they are paying off government officials to look the other way.
For real?
They're a billion-dollar church. They have the money to pay off officials to be like, you didn't see that, did you?
Wow.
We don't have full-on receipts that we could pull out and show you for a fact, but we know based on word of mouth.
Yeah.
Government officials who we've had friends who are in contact with them. It's very under wraps, but I know there are people in government who are trying to root out this problem and stop the underage marriage and stop the incest. Like, if anything, can we please just stop marrying your own cousins and half sisters? Like, come on. It's not okay.
Is that so hard to ask for?
Yeah, because the children are the ones who are suffering. They're the ones who have birth defects. They're the ones who are dying, and they don't get medical care because they don't believe in taking people to the doctors or the hospitals. Women are dying giving birth.
Wow.
It's really, really
So they're
sad.
all doing home births?
Yes.
Jeez.
And I'm all for, if you want to birth at home and you're a low-risk pregnancy and that's your choice, by all means. But forced home birth, even with twins, even with high-risk pregnancy, it's just not safe.
Not at all. You got to be close to a hospital at least if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
That is
The
crazy.
horror stories I have heard of these women who are dying giving birth, literally having near-death experiences, and they can hear the leaders saying, what are we going to do with the body when she dies because she has a birth certificate?
Oh my
Like,
God.
that's what we're talking about here, the level of insanity.
That's nuts. Yeah, because I guess if they're doing home births, they're not getting birth certificates, right? The new kids.
So in some cases, so now they are. In older times, I think there were cases where kids weren't getting birth certificates. I'm not 100% sure on that. But now they're just putting different dads on the birth certificate because they can't get caught practicing polygamy. So they just make up a father's name.
Wow.
And all the kids have different last names.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That is so crazy to me. Yeah, I know someone out here actually that had like 27 siblings. And I thought that was weird, but he was like, no, it's normal. Like, that's just a thing in Utah, right?
Yeah. Well, for some of these polygamous groups, yeah.
I can't believe
When I was
that.
Mormon, I had no idea that they still existed. And I would get mad when I moved to Vegas and they're like, how many moms do you have? I was like, oh, it's so annoying. We stopped practicing polygamy so long ago.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that there were hundreds. There are over 400 polygamous sects still happening in Utah, all over the world, actually. A lot of them went to Mexico. That's where you have the LeBarons that were practicing blood atonement and murdering people for God.
What?
Yeah.
Blood atonement?
Blood atonement. Have you heard of blood atonement?
No, what is that?
So basically, in Brigham Young's time, so Joseph Smith died. He's the founder.
Yeah.
Brigham Young takes over. He's the one who migrates everyone to Utah. They settle Utah. He declares himself king. It's ridiculous. It basically just becomes this isolated area where he's massacring people who come through because he's paranoid. He thinks people are out to get him. When in reality, it's just, the gold rush happened and people are trying to migrate and go to California. So a lot of crazy, wild, wild west out in Utah at that point. So he enacts what is called the blood atonement. I'm unsure if it's something that Joseph Smith started talking about and then Brigham Young just took it upon himself to enact it, or if it was specifically Brigham Young. But basically it means you could commit something that is so atrocious that not even Jesus could atone for your sins.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to ensure that you can go to heaven after doing something this crazy was for someone to slit your throat and spill your blood on the ground. And then you would be atoned and you could go to heaven. So he was blood atoning people for just trying to leave the colony.
Wow.
Like, hey guys, don't really like what's going on here. I'm going to get out of here. And he would just off people. Or he would say, do you love your sisters and your brothers enough to save them from themselves? So I don't know if you ever saw the Under the Banner of Heaven, came out a few years ago.
No.
Oh, fantastic series. It was based on a true story. So the Lafferty brothers in Utah, this is in the 70s, they discovered these writings and they realized, wow, we're just not being good Mormons. It's so diluted. We're not following the core principles of Mormonism. And they wrote a list and started killing people, their own family. They started blood atoning them.
Jeez.
And even if you go to prison now and ask them, do you think this was wrong? Nope, that's what Jesus wanted. That's what God wanted.
Wow.
Yeah. So that happened quite a bit in Mexico with the LeBarons. There were a couple brothers who they split. Ervil was his name, Evil Ervil, so I like to say. He was like, I am the one mighty and strong, which comes from a Book of Mormon scripture, basically saying that a prophet will reveal himself. So he said, anyone who opposes me is basically not true Mormon. And so he massacred a bunch of people and a bunch of other leaders of polygamous sects. In fact, the order was really scared of Ervil, and they went into hiding because they were on his list.
Jeez.
And that you can find in Daughters of a Cult documentary that came out a year and a half ago. And I spoke with some of the LeBaron sisters about it on our channel too. Mormonism is a mess.
Yeah, I did not know there were all these different branches. I didn't know there was a branch in Mexico at all.
Yeah.
That's
They went
crazy.
to Mexico when the United States was like, seriously, you guys have to stop practicing polygamy, because they kept saying, yeah, we'll stop. And then they kept doing it. Oh, yeah, we'll stop. And then finally they did. But there were people, like I was saying earlier, who were like, no, Joseph Smith said that this is the way to get to the highest level of heaven. So they just went to other places like Canada and Mexico that wouldn't pay attention.
And he never got in trouble for doing those blood atonements? Like,
Ervil,
yeah.
he was shot. I don't remember who finally did it. So I feel like that was...
Oh, he got shot and killed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was an easy way out for him, I think. He should have been in jail.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really scary for a lot of people who had to live in fear. And we've interviewed people who they would ring the bell anytime they saw his family coming through town, and they would have to scatter, take all of their kids, hide in the dunes. It was a whole thing.
Yeah. You think the Mormonism stuff has the worst cults compared to the other religions from what you've seen? Because you've interviewed a lot of people.
No.
Really?
There are worse.
Worse than what you just said? Because that shit's crazy.
It is crazy. But to me, nothing is worse than harming a child. While the order has a lot of child abuse and a lot of sex abuse, it's not part of the doctrine. Have you heard of Children of God?
No.
So actually, the Phoenix family was part of Children of God, Joaquin Phoenix, River Phoenix. And
Really?
Yeah. So Children of God is, to me, the most insidious cults out there. It doesn't really exist in this capacity anymore as far as I'm aware, but I've interviewed a lot of people who came from it, who grew up in it. Again, they moved the cult compounds all over the world where they could get away with it with high walls. In Asia, in Brazil, in Mexico, a little bit in the US, but it was harder to keep it a secret because they would truly live on compounds. It wasn't just multiple homes like in the order. So basically, this guy in the late 60s, early 70s was like, hey, with all this free love and whatever, I want to bring back a true version of Christianity. It was very wholesome in the beginning, but I think he was just a perverted pedophile. And so eventually, once he got enough members and he got a lot of control, he basically said, hey, God is love and love is sex. So to show love, we have to be sexually liberated. But it was directed toward the women. So it was basically forced polyamory, and that worked its way down to the children too.
Jeez.
So we need to sexually liberate children. He actually had them write this book. I think it's called the Book of Davidito. And Davidito was his own child. And this nanny it's really hard to even say. Trigger warning. This nanny was in charge of basically sexually abusing him, documenting it with photos and writings on this is how you sexually abuse children, but it was liberate children.
Jeez.
And so it's one of the worst cult paraphernalia books of all time. It's disgusting. Davidito he escaped the cult. I don't know what age. I don't know too much about his individual story, except that he was all over the news when he committed murder-suicide.
Wow.
Because he was trying to get revenge for what they did to him. And that's when a lot of people actually realized that they were in a cult when they saw on the news Children of God cult, and they're like, wait, are we in a cult? Because, again, it's information control. When you grow up completely isolated, especially on a compound, or in a third world country, you don't really know what you don't know. And so the stories that have come out of Children of God are so horrible, and I would recommend Daniela Messanek-Young's book Uncultured. She does a fantastic job detailing her experience there. There's so many books and so many amazing guests that we've had from Children of God. Even we had a guy come on and talk about, because it wasn't just the girls they were sexually abusing, it was the boys too.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, I feel like that was probably one of the worst. They did during the AIDS epidemic say, okay, guys, we need to like pull back on the everyone having sex with each other thing. And they stopped having sex with children. I think it was, okay, if they're under 16, you can't have sex with them. But if they're both under 16, they can have sex with each other. That's fine. So, and also, when you're taking a 16-year-old into the hospital and the dad is like a 40-year-old dude, people are asking questions. So they even at one point said, okay, you can have sex with them if they're not menstruating, because then they can't get pregnant and then nobody knows, which is even worse because that's even younger. And of course, they're all slightly different accounts because they come from different countries, and it was controlled by David Berg, the leader, and they had their own media and everything. But I think different cults did things differently, or different branches all over the world based on leadership, based on the perverts who were in control. And a lot of people said, well, yeah, they specifically outlawed it, but it still happened behind closed doors because you don't stop being a pedophile. If you allow sex with children, then one day say, never mind, people are still going to do it. So, yeah, I think Children of God was probably, I think 2 of those interviews, I just closed the computer, just broke down crying because it was just, it was a lot to take in.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
What happened to that David Berg guy?
He died. I want to say he got cancer. I can't remember the exact cause, but it was one of those situations where you hear all the time in cults where the leader is going to live forever and he's immortal and he's just here because he loves us. He doesn't have to be here, but he wants to be here to help. And then they die and everyone's like, wait, did he really die?
Yeah.
So I think they were waiting for him to be resurrected. That never happened, obviously. And then the leadership just got turned down to, I think it was his wife who took over, which is also uncommon for a woman to be in power. And then eventually it kind of got, I think it got raided and disbanded in certain countries. And so they've rebranded now. It still exists, but it's not to that capacity.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of cults. I saw one on Netflix. It was like a weight loss cult.
The Way Down.
Yeah, the blonde girl,
I watched that, and Gwen Shamblin, I think is her name, and I've been wanting to get someone from that group to talk about it, where they're like, you basically don't have to eat, and God will take away your hunger. Well, that's gonna lead to an eating disorder. That's not how it works.
Yeah, they were fat shaming everyone. Like they would measure your waist, I think.
Crazy.
It was crazy, and people loved it for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. When you're that like indoctrinated, nothing someone says phases you.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And it can happen to anyone. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, how can you fall for this? It's a slow burn. It's a boiling of the frog. If you're born in it, you don't know any other reality.
Right.
And if you join, they don't start off with, hey, we have sex with kids, come join. It's very strategic. And honestly, with any group, even mainstream Mormonism, you don't know what goes on in the temple until you get there. It's highly secretive, and they call it sacred, and that's why you don't question it. And so the more invested you get, the more you learn little by little by little by little. So by the time you get to the top, it doesn't matter how crazy it is. You're so invested.
You dedicated years.
Your whole life, time, money, everything, where you're like, okay, well, they've been doing it and they're smart, so I'm the problem.
Yeah.
You don't think, this is insane. But if they would have introduced the temple rituals when you were younger, like, hey, come to the temple, you'd be like, this is weird. I don't know about this.
Yeah.
It's all by design. They have to slowly get you more and more invested and keep the information from you. And then once you're in, you're in. It's really hard to wake up from that.
For sure. Have you interviewed someone from Scientology yet?
So many.
A lot.
That's one that I didn't know how crazy it was until I started hearing from the survivors and the Leah Remini show, of course, the aftermath. So, funny story, I lived in LA and I was, doing the acting thing.
Yeah.
And I actually acted in some of their little internal videos.
Oh, yeah?
And so I went to headquarters as an actor. And it was so crazy because I had been acting for a while and they always had gigs. And they paid like $200 for a couple hours. So for me, at that time, I was like, score, this is great. So I remember going to headquarters and the set was run so smooth. It was one of the most on point sets I'd ever worked on. It was like well-oiled machine. Everyone had their job. And the funny thing is, I remember asking to go to the bathroom, and they escorted me to the bathroom. Like, they wouldn't let me go anywhere by myself. It was super, like, you're allowed to be in this room, and you're allowed to go to this hallway, and then we will make sure you come back to this room. It was like,
That's
I
weird.
understand now. It's because they had some crazy stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to see.
They didn't want you wandering off.
Yeah, so with Scientology, I think a lot of people know the stories from the aftermath and the whole going clear and working up the ladder. It's a pay-to-play situation, very clearly a pyramid scheme. But, well, not clear to the people who were in it, but clear to us. And what people don't realize is the effect it has on children, because when you're born into Scientology, you're not wanted. They even, if you're in the Sea Org, you're not allowed to have children. And so when they do get pregnant, they usually get kicked off or like taken to somewhere else, and the kids are just like dropped into this orphanage situation, and they're raised by people around them who aren't really watching them. So they're severely neglected in every sense: medical neglect, emotional neglect, education neglect, all of those things. And the stories you hear about the children are so heartbreaking, because again, they don't really know any different. They know they don't want to be there, but it's just, it's sad how cults end up hurting children the most in every situation. I mean, I don't think there's a cult where the children make out well. And specifically with Scientology, they say that there are no such thing as children. They say that children are thetans, or spirits. I hope I'm getting the terminology right. They're spirits who have lived for thousands, millions, billions of years already. And so they're just dropped into a little body, which means they don't treat them like a child. They don't understand that a child has a brain that is not developed yet, and they can't understand things. They just physically can't do it, but they're punishing them like adults. And they're like, you should know better. You're a billion years old. Yeah. And so these kids are just forced to grow up so fast and forced to be a way that they're not developmentally ready for. And it's really damaging to them.
Wow. I did not know that. Yeah, when I was in LA, is that where their main location is, LA?
So their main headquarters is in Clearwater, Florida, but they do have a lot of locations in LA.
Yeah, I was just walking. I think it might have been Melrose or something, and they like stopped me. And I didn't know what Scientology was at the time. I was like, what is this? Like, and then they asked for my email and shit. I was like, this is weird.
Yeah, they recruit hard. I remember when I first moved to LA, before I even knew what Scientology was, I was in one of those I was like signing up to be an extra, and it's this huge long line that you have to wait outside this building. And they were walking up and down passing out flyers basically saying, if you want to be famous, we'll help you get there, which is so manipulative, because of course all of these young bright-eyed bushy-tailed kids who go to LA to be an actor are like, yeah, totally, but they don't have money to pay for Scientology.
Yeah.
But that's how they get you, is they get you super invested, make all these false promises. And maybe the classes in the beginning do make a difference, because it's basically a self-help cult in the beginning. And then it gets super kooky when you get all the way up to Xenu. But initially it's like, yeah, this is helpful. I can basically use this as therapy to understand why I act a certain way and help me show up better in the world and be more productive. But then it just gets more and more and more damaging, and you don't realize it because the initial part was helpful. So you stick with it because you're like, well, this worked in the past. I must be the issue. I should just keep going. And that's how you get stuck.
That makes sense. Whenever I see Tom Cruise get asked about it, he gets so defensive.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Well, anyone in a cult, like I was saying, I was the same way, because it's something that you hold so close to you, and it's not a belief system. It's an identity.
Right.
So when someone says Mormonism is a cult and you're Mormon, they're basically saying you're crazy to your face.
It's a personal attack.
Yes. And so of course you're going to get really worked up about it and be like, no, that's not true. You don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's a personal attack.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You recently interviewed some Amish women, 5 Amish women from 5 different settlements. Did you get any culty vibes from any of those interviews?
So all of those women I had interviewed previously on my channel, so I knew their stories very well. Yeah. And so that was one of our panels we did for our 250th episode. It was kind of like a celebratory, let's bring all these women together who grew up differently but the same and compare notes. So it was really interesting seeing how some of them are like, oh yeah, I remember that, or in ours it was a little bit different. But overall, I would say the Amish, and I don't like making blanket statements
Yeah.
because everyone's different. Even within Mormonism, you go to a different state, they're going to act differently. But I think it's pretty fair to say that based on the systems that are in place within the Amish theology and the Amish rules, it creates a predator's paradise. So it creates a place where predators can essentially harm children, harm whoever they want, get a slap on the wrist, and then they do it again. They are not reported to police because it's against the Amish way to go to the police. In fact, if you're a victim of sexual assault and you choose to go to the police, it is highly likely that you will be punished more severely than the offender himself.
Holy crap.
So in all of their cases, I think most of them who I had on had gone to the police for sexual assault, even marital. And when they went to court, they would bus in tons of Amish people in favor of the perpetrator
Wow.
because the person speaking out is in worse shape than the perpetrator himself. So it creates this cycle of abuse where these men, and they're almost always men. Actually, I don't know a single woman who has been a perpetrator in the Amish, from my knowledge, just get away with it. They're put in the ban where they're not allowed to eat with the family. People aren't supposed to talk to them. It's kind of, but the way most of these Amish women explain it is it's like a break. They're like, oh, they don't have to go to church. Bummer. They're so sad, you know? Oh no, they can't help with dinner, you know? They can't hold the kids, that type of thing. And so really, it's not much of a punishment. No accountability is taken. And then when they go up on Sunday and say, I'm so sorry, will you guys forgive me? They have to take a vote and say, okay, I think they're sorry enough. We'll let them back into the church. I asked them about it and I was like, has anyone ever opposed? And said, no, I don't think that they're sorry. And they all said, no, because you would be shamed if you opposed it. You have to just go along with it. And then afterward, that person is considered forgiven. God has forgiven them as well. And if you bring it up, you will be punished.
Wow.
So if the victim goes to their mom and they're like, hey, I still feel really weird about dad being in the house because he abused me, they're like, shh, you can't talk about it. Dad has been forgiven. You need to get over it. So there's no help for the victims. There's no type of therapy. It's just swept under the rug. It's just, that's how it was. And then if dad does it again, he'll just have to repent again for 6 more weeks. And then it'll just keep going. Or at that point, the victim learns very early on that nothing's done. Why even do anything?
Yeah.
Why even report it? They're shamed so the women who are sexually assaulted are usually blamed because they walked too pretty or they clearly seduced them in some way. Maybe they pinned their dress too tight. And we're even talking about with siblings. So Mary Byler is one of the people I had on there. She was assaulted by her brothers multiple times and cousins. And she was blamed because her hair was out when she was sleeping. That's why they're like, well, clearly you were asking for it. She's like, I was asleep. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And she is one of the few who decided to go to the police because it was just repetitive, happening over and over, and she was sick of it. So these are the stories that come out of the Amish, and I believe it is because of the very strict rules, the extreme purity culture. We had on a man, Eli Yoder, who he goes, yeah, I didn't even know what pregnancy was. I wasn't allowed to know.
Wow.
I just knew that mom had the sickness, is what they would call it, and so her belly got bigger. And then one day I had a baby brother. And everyone says, well, you worked on a farm. Wouldn't you know what sex was? He said that they were told to never compare humans to animals because that was horrible. You can't compare a human to an animal. And so he was like, well, I'd seen how the cows did it and how the farm animals did it, but I was told that humans were different, to never compare. So they are kept so in the dark with sex education that it's going to happen. There's going to be sexual distortions and deviations when you're not properly educating kids on what sex is, how sex works, how babies are made, and then you get them married and expect them to have as many children as possible.
Yeah. That is so nuts. I didn't know there was a side to the Amish because there's a lot in Pennsylvania, as we were talking about, and I got both my puppies from them. They make really good dog breeders, but I did not know there was this dark side to them too.
Yeah, well, the puppy mills, that's something that a lot of people bring up in the comments, and I haven't had the heart to ask about it because I don't know if I'm gonna have the stomach to hear what
Yeah.
goes on in the puppy mills. I've heard that it's horrible animal abuse and that they treat all of their animals horribly. I can't say for a fact that that's how it is in every Amish community, but yeah, I have heard that the puppy mills are pretty
Yeah, we went to
horrendous.
about 4 or 5 breeders, and unfortunately, one of them was a mill. And then I ended up looking up. They ran it through the husband's name, but if you look up the wife's name, she was like already banned for doing puppy mills in the past.
Yeah.
So they just transfer the name as they get caught, and there's no really punishment. You know what I mean? Like they're
Mhm.
not going to go to prison for that. So
Yeah.
it's really sad.
If anyone's interested in learning more about the Amish, there's a really good documentary called Sins of the Amish, and that's where I first learned about everything that goes on in some of these settlements. And then, of course, you can watch our videos with the guests and hear it from their perspective as well.
Yeah, I got to look into that because you see these posts on social media where it's like the Amish people have no mental health issues. Have you seen that?
They're romanticized.
Right.
But that's the thing is when they don't accept outside medical care for the most part, they just go undiagnosed.
Right.
So it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course it exists. They're just treated differently or they're sent to they have their own facilities with people who aren't actually licensed providers and basically giving them religious rehabilitation, but they're not actually helping them because they're not qualified to do
Yeah.
so. So it's not that the Amish don't have problems, it's just they ship people away. They traffic people to other communities for labor. They just move people around. They make people disappear.
hmm
So it's a lot more complicated than people realize. And one of the top comments I see on our Amish videos are basically what you're saying. I had no idea that this was going on in the Amish, and I always romanticize them, and I love reading the romance novels.
Yeah.
But that's not how it is.
Yeah, you've changed my perspective. They make some damn good food too.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll give them that. But yeah, this is crazy to me. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, and it's fine to have good things come out of a cult. A lot of the Amish who do leave end up having their own farms or their own gardens, and they keep those traditions, which is great
Mm.
because you can have your own. What's the word they use when you have your own?
Homestead or
Homestead is the
Yeah.
word I'm looking for. You can have a homestead and not be a cult, you know?
right.
And every cult is going to have some positive or else no one would stick around.
True.
So there's always going to be something you can take away from it and learn from it, which is probably my biggest pet peeve, especially about Mormonism, is they're like, but what about the family values? They love their family. I'm like, do you have to be in a cult to love your family? There are different ways to teach your children how to be kind people than to severely control them and psychologically manipulate them into doing what you want them to do. They don't have choices. It's an illusion of choice. When people say, well, I choose to go to the temple or I choose to wear my garments, do you choose that or are you afraid of the consequences if you don't?
Mm.
So if you truly had a choice, then you would probably make a different choice. Like if you asked women who felt forced to wear the garments, but who loved them, truly loved them, and you said, would you wear these if you absolutely had to? Would you wear them if you weren't shamed into it? Would you wear them if you could go to the temple without them? I bet you most people would say no because they're highly uncomfortable. They create medical issues for the women.
Mm.
And it's just, I feel like people are just coerced into making these choices because of either the fear of punishment or what the reward is if they do it.
I could see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. One last thing on the Amish thing. I could see that community outlasting a lot of cults just because of the no electronics rule they have too.
Yeah, because of the information control.
Yeah, I feel like they have really good information control.
Yeah, I think so. It's tricky because in some ways they're completely isolated, and then in other ways they do get drivers to take them places and to go into the outside world.
Mm.
But some people are exposed. I would say most people are exposed to at least a peek of the outside world, which is why they know, oh, there's something different out here that I could have.
hmm
Otherwise, I don't think if they were never exposed at all, they probably wouldn't try to escape because they don't
Right.
even know what's out there. But yes, that is a big one, the information control. There are people like Eli who sneak cell phones into the Amish communities so that they can start Googling and looking things up.
Mm.
But of course, if you're caught, then you're punished. So I think that's a good point that they probably could outlast. I do think that eventually people just aren't going to put up with it anymore, or the rules are going to get more lax, like most cults who have to dilute things to keep people in
Yeah.
because it's just too strenuous and people don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. I remember when I went to adopt the puppies, I couldn't even film. Like when I called them that I was on the way, they used like an old house phone. Like it was very old school. No
Yeah.
electricity past a certain hour, I think, too.
Most of the Amish communities or settlements that I've interviewed from didn't have electricity at all.
Wow.
But I do know that there are exceptions. Of course, like I was saying, it depends on the leadership in the area. They all decide on the rules as a whole. So there's not one leader of the Amish.
Mhm.
You know, like Mormonism, there's one leader all over the world. It's just everyone follows him. So it does vary from settlement to settlement. And in some cases, Mennonites are even more strict than the Amish. It
Really?
really just depends. But yeah, we had someone from the Black Bumper Mennonite who had a really intense situation. But for the most part, I think the Old Order Amish and the Swartz and Trooper are the most strict settlements out there.
Mm. Do you feel like overall the membership counts of these cults is going down on a yearly basis, up, or is it about the same from what you've experienced
I think it's going down.
in all of them?
Yeah. I think people are leaving in droves because they are getting more access to information, especially the last 6 years. I
Yeah.
think there's been this fascination with cults.
Oh, yeah. Documentaries.
Documentaries, right, left and center. Everyone's putting out a documentary on cults, ourselves included. We're
Yeah.
working on one now. So I think that it's bringing attention to this, and people are starting to recognize cultic patterns and start to understand that even relationships can be culty.
Mm.
So we don't specifically stick with the traditional definition of a cult. We even talk to people who have been in cultic relationships, which tend to have narcissistic partners or
Mhm.
abusive partners, and how they're completely controlled and manipulated, and how leaving is like leaving a cult where you're completely cut off, where you are shamed or defamed when you leave. And there are lots of ways that cults can basically infiltrate mainstream society. People will even say politics can be a cult, and I don't
I
disagree.
can see that, especially right now.
Yeah, it's a tricky time right now. And we try not to get into politics on our channel because it is so divisive,
Yeah.
because it's culty, you know,
Yeah.
on both sides. So I think understanding these cultic patterns and manipulations helps people really recognize what they're a part of. Even self-help groups. You have Nexium,
Mhm.
like Sarah Edmondson. You have yoga cults. You have meditation cults. You have, like, it doesn't just stop at religion. You go to the New Age side, crazy stuff going
Yeah.
on
There's
in
some
those.
health cults for sure.
Yeah. So I think with all of this interest in cults right now, people are starting to wake up to what's going on and starting to realize when they're not fully in their power and when they're being controlled and manipulated, even just psychologically. You don't have to be in a compound to be in a cult.
Yeah.
That's why I talk about mainstream Mormonism, because to me it's a psychological cult. They get you to self-police. They get you to turn yourself in and tell your sins to a bishop, your sexual sins to this random dude. And so that's why I left. Because it's so insidious when they can get you to turn yourself in. They can get you to do anything.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be in chains to be in a cult situation. So I think with all of that coming to mainstream society and mainstream consciousness, people are starting to recognize, hey, this is a weird situation. Maybe I should be on the lookout. Like, our channel is about educating, awareness, and compassion.
Mm.
It's not about speculation and like, oh my gosh, these people are crazy. It's about, I want you to be able to understand why this person was in this situation for so long, maybe how they even got recruited, because it's important to know that anyone can be recruited into a cult. It's not, people think, oh, you must be dumb to be recruited. Usually it's the smarter ones because they make more allowances. So, and this was a study found.
Mm.
Study found, and I can't remember the exact person who did this study, but you can convince a smarter person of certain crazy things because they can make the connections in their brain make sense.
Wow.
They can do the mental gymnastics to go, oh yeah, that could be true because of this, and that could be true because of this. Therefore, you're probably right. And they can make it make sense in their head. And so I think that anyone can be sucked into a cult. Anyone can be coerced. Anyone can be manipulated. No one's immune. So the more you're aware of these control tactics, the more you can understand the red flags, the more you can stop yourself early and go, This feels like love bombing. This feels like coercive control. This is a weird feeling. Should I lean into that, or should I back away and actually just take a minute to think about this? Because oftentimes cults will say, you're uncomfortable because you're growing.
Yeah.
You're uncomfortable because you have to stretch in order to become the person you're meant to be. When in reality, your gut's like, hey, something feels off. We need to check in with this. And so learning those red flags will help people avoid getting sucked into cults. And so with all of that, long story long, people are leaving cults at higher numbers because they're able to recognize the signs. They're able to deconstruct their experience and realize that they've been in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And they're able to see other people tell their stories and go, oh my gosh, that's my story. The number one tactic to deconvert or deconstruct someone away from their cult is to show them a different one. So a lot of people will say, I left Mormonism because I looked into Scientology. or I left Jehovah's Witnesses because I looked into Mormonism. They're like sister cults. So if you can look at another cult and go, oh yeah, that's wrong. Oh, they're covering up child sex abuse. That's definitely wrong. Oh, they're making members confess their sins to someone else in a higher controlled power. Yeah, that's probably wrong. And then you go, isn't that what your group's doing? And then they go, wait, hold on. Because it's harder to recognize things in your own group because it's your identity, because you've defended it for so long, because sunk cost fallacy, because everything we've already talked about.
Right.
So that's why it's so important for people to share their stories. And that's why it's so valuable to share stories, because people can start to recognize and deconstruct their own life.
Yeah. I mean, look at how many people you've impacted just from sharing your story.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. And mine isn't even that crazy. Like, when I always get the imposter syndrome too, because I'm like, yes, I had a pretty good childhood. I did experience CSA at a young age. And so I'm able to relate to my guests with that. And I'm able to understand the psychological control as well with people leaving cults. But man, there are some groups out there, like we've talked about, that are absolutely insane and horrific and disgusting and sadistic. And they're torturing people for God. And so, yeah, I hope that my story helps people. But for the most part, I just try to use my story and my experience to help others share the spotlight, to help others tell their stories in a safe environment. Because I have heard of people, especially who go on documentaries. We have lots of guests who've been on and they're like, oh, I felt exploited. I felt taken advantage of. The people asking questions were so insensitive.
Wow.
And it's hard. I've been in that situation.
Yeah, because you're trying to like get like headlines, right?
Yeah.
But you want to be respectful at the same time.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, especially as a YouTuber. You know, you have to toe the line of sensationalism and also respecting your guests in a way that they would feel comfortable. And you also have to make a clicky enough title and thumbnail so anyone who doesn't know the show is like, interesting, click on it. So it is tricky, and sometimes we even run them by our guests, be like, hey, are you okay with this?
Smart.
Because we want you to feel comfortable. We don't want them to feel exploited. And at the same time, they're like, yes, I'm comfortable with that because I think views and exposure are more important than me being comfy with the title.
That makes sense. I might have to start doing that. Probably should. Well, this has been great. Where can people watch your show, and your documentary's coming out this year or next year?
It's probably going to be next year. I can't say too much about it right now, but it's going to be so awesome and impactful. So our show is Cults to Consciousness on YouTube. We're on Instagram, but our main platform is YouTube. You can find us on the podcast platforms, but go to YouTube.
That's the best one.
Always have to promote YouTube. You get it. You're a content creator.
It's the most important one.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to be able to see the person and connect with their face and see their expressions. And also, we do most of ours remote. I wish we had a studio we could just fly people out, but most of them are remote, and so you get a little peek into their world and what they're doing now. So it's pretty cool. So yeah.
Check it out, guys, especially if you're looking for some cult advice.
Cult advice. Yeah, something like that. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. See you guys. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the show a lot with the algorithm. Thank you.